Welcome to Hot Tech Trends Happy Hour. This is part of our PR Essentials Summit series and episode 114.
Welcome to the PR Playbook Podcast, the only podcast giving you actionable skills and advice you need to execute a strategic PR program. Warning: what you hear next may lead to brand awareness and increased sales and customer exposure. Now here's your host, Ranjini Joshua.
Hello and welcome to the PR Essentials Summit Hot Tech Trends Happy Hour. It's a mouthful. Before we get into this episode, I just want to kind of give you guys a little bit of a preview. So this is a conversation we had with Milton Santiago and Dean Takahashi. And I'm here with our account director, Megan Alba. And we're just talking about some of the trends that, one, we're just seeing in the media in general, but also some of the hot trends that are going to be present and prevalent at CES 2023, like generative AI and some other stuff. Just talking about how media has changed over the last couple of years, especially through COVID and what the landscape looks like. And this conversation, it was just very candid. And at the end of a first day of our PR Essentials Summit, and it was just like really nice to get some insights and information straight from the media on their perspective on what's going on in the landscape and what are some of the hot trends that are coming up. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and we'll return to our regularly scheduled programming next week. Hello, this is Ranjini Joshua, the CEO and founder of the Silver Telegram. Thank you guys for joining us for Hot Tech Trends. It's happy hour. I don't know if I can start drinking yet, but I would love to. We've got, we don't know what's in Milton's cup. So with that, we have here Megan Alba, account director. And then we've got Milton Santiago, also known as EBP Man Tech Reviews. And then, of course, we have Dean Takahashi, who's the lead writer for VentureBeat's Games Beat. And we're going to be talking about what is going on with tech and some of the news trends that are happening right now. And we'll end off here with a little anticipation for CES and what we should be expecting, what people are excited about. And if you are someone who has something at CES, what you should be pitching and how. So, hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. I'm so excited to have you here because I think it's really nice to be able to kind of touch base and get an understanding from, a media perspective, what's going on. So I think, Dean, I'll start with you. How has the landscape been right now as far as all the things that are being busy? I feel like everyone's very digital, and I'm sure you're kind of inundated with lots of new ideas. What is the kind of conversation like in the media these days?
That's a big one. I feel like it's still always, drinking from a fire hose. We either have lots of good news or, interesting new innovations in technology, or we have lots of bad news, like companies falling apart, like FTX, right? And so, it just sort of never slows down. And the challenge right now, I think, is just to, try to see through some of the daily muck to see the stuff that's really important. And it does, as sort of maybe tired of the subject some people may already be. I think generative AI is catching sort of a lot of attention in different industries. Gaming, it's particularly interesting there because it could make the artists much more productive, or it could put them out of work, right? So things like that.
Yeah, I've actually heard that a couple times today. Generative AI is the buzzword for the moment. So we'll see. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But what about you, Milton? What are you kind of seeing people throw your way?
So what I'm seeing is a couple of things. I think 2022 was a year of incremental improvement. It wasn't one of massive innovation or transformation. And we saw that from handset manufacturers. We saw that from, if you think about computers, all the consumables where there were minor upgrades. And I would say possibly for many was and for the consumer, in some cases, it could have been an area of disappointment. Now, coming into 2023, what I see is that we're starting to see the advent of larger innovation jumping in. And really where I'm seeing a lot of focus is also in the AR space. So we talked about AI, but augmented reality is something that you're starting to see more than ever. You see a lot of these not even virtual reality glasses, but the augmented reality glasses, you're starting to see more and more of these start showing up in Kickstarter. I'm seeing a lot of brands reaching out that this is coming in. And I think that more and more of this is becoming more common. It's more common to everyone. If you've driven a car lately, one of the more newer ones, it's not uncommon to see maybe your speed, turn left, turn right, overlaid on top of what you have. If you use your phone for Google navigation, like you're walking in a downtown city, you can actually see arrows pointing where you should walk. Pokemon Go, right, which the gaming solution was one of the first that really hit it really big with augmented reality. So I see augmented reality. I see then also larger innovation versus the incremental innovation that we saw in 2022.
That's really interesting. I think, it's always interesting to see what trends are coming out. And I kind of agree with you. You don't see anything like huge coming out of last year. But how do you think this year will be different? Because, we've got this recession coming. A lot of people are concerned, but we still got like a very, I would say, a healthy startup community, but not a lot of funding. Like, I don't know. What do you see coming out of the big challenge of like Q1 2023? Dean, I'll let you start.
Yeah. I think like if you think of the way 2022 started, it was all the rage was like the metaverse and blockchain, right? Blockchain games, and we've had a crypto winter that got extended thanks to the FTX debacle, and I think that's shaking out a lot of the sort of bad ideas right now. I guess the overhyped ideas, and we'll still see a lot of that. I think at CES, because it's sort of baked into the long term. But once we get through sort of weeding out the bad ideas, then there's some interesting things that happen. There's a company I wrote about today called Futureverse that was rolling up 8 different blockchain and metaverse technology companies into one company. And so consolidation in those spaces is already, just beginning now after some years of the funding running amok, where in gaming, where I focus, 40% of all fundings went into blockchain games, and blockchain games are about 1 to 2% of the revenues of the entire game industry, and so people went bananas for it, right? And so we're seeing a reset where a lot of those companies, may run out of money, and a lot of those ideas are getting sort of looked at and maybe put on the back burner because they could be so far out for when the masses of consumers really come into those things.
Are you seeing any kind of like convergence between now video games, like very much like you're saying, video games, and then like mainstream technology? Do you see anything like kind of converging over, like it's not as separate as it used to be, right? Like games used to be games and tech used to be tech. And now there's like this overlaying, like AR, metaverse, all this stuff is like kind of overlapping. Do you see more of that happening?
Yeah, I mean, I really am one of those people who believes in the metaverse, and I started believing in the metaverse when I was a science fiction fan, right? And then 8-9 years ago, AI started actually working, and like one of those science fiction things that you never thought would happen actually happened, and all these other things start to fall into place. And so these dreams of the metaverse, they're not so unrealistic. Like we're talking on Zoom here, but in the not so distant future, we could have something much better, more interesting, because I think the pandemic sort of made us think about that more. That there should be some other way to communicate where it does feel much better, more social, more interesting. And so we see, like, to me, I see this blurring of science fiction, actual technology for the metaverse, blockchain, games, even entertainment. Like so many games are being made into movies and TV shows now, like, Last of Us, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting environment now where everything is just getting blended in my view.
It's so funny because people, I feel like people used to well, I know in my house, people used to make fun of games, video games, and you're like, oh, your computer games, you're wasting your time. And now it's taking over the world. So,
Yeah, I happened to get on a panel with a 20 something woman, and I brought up that story that like games when I grew up were so nerdy, and people
yeah.
made fun of them, and like and she goes, for all of my life, games have been cool.
That's so crazy. Yeah, that's pretty.
That's how you show your age now. Were games cool or nerdy when you were growing up?
or did you have dial up or not?
Right.
What about Milton from the hardware perspective? I mean, obviously you get a really lot of, I'm sure a lot of cool pitches, and we're talking about kind of talking into CES in a minute, but what are you seeing as far as that convergence and what people are sending you now? Obviously, we still have our cell phones and stuff like that, but even those are changing, right?
Yeah. And I'm with Dean. So I am a huge believer in metaverse. And I think that the biggest challenge that we've had, going back to some of the things that I just want to kind of just agree with Dean, what you were saying is that metaverse was very foreign for many people. And I remember, if you think about Star Trek and the holodeck, that's what people would think about as a metaverse. Mm-hmm. But with the pandemic, the way we're communicating right now is meta. The fact that we're virtually speaking with each other. So even if you think about senior citizens that had never Zoomed before, knew what Zoom was. Zoom has become, before, if you were in a corporate space, you had telepresence, right? That was the thing. WebEx was a thing. But I think Zoom has become what Kleenex, the brand, is to tissue paper, right? So you think about that. That's been a massive transformation, and that's what I think. That is what capitalizes or catapults actually innovation and transformation. Because given the kind of like the background that you're sharing, Dean, the Newton was ahead of its time, right? And you think about where we are now and how tablets are such a thing. Think about handwriting is coming back with Remarkable too, and what Kindle is doing with their tablet. Who would have thought? In a society where many kids don't even know how to write, they know how to type, but they don't know how to write. So now you see, the pen is coming back to digital. So, so I think that when I look at, and what excites me is, I think that the fact that the consumers are becoming more comfortable with the technology, and the technology is feeling less like technology and more like a common appliance in the house, right? Mm-hmm. One of the things I was speaking at a panel in Asia about Meta, and we talked about blockchain and the adoption of technology. And, while you can talk about blockchain, you can talk about Bitcoin, you can talk about Ethereum, the majority of the consumers don't know what that is or what that means, right? But 61% of consumers say that they would buy more if they had an AR experience when they're shopping, right? How many times have you gone to a website and they say, you want to try on the glasses? And you're looking at yourself and you can try them on, right? The same thing would be with clothes. This, when you think about at least the convergence of Meta, VR, and AR, it is a massive market opportunity. And I think that that's going to be, one of the most largest transformations that we'll see as a society. And furthermore to that is, when I think about what's happening with CES, and at least with the technology that I've been getting and everything, I would say that things are becoming more immersive, right? Yeah. Things are becoming, if you think about the TVs that you watch, if you think about the phones that you have, if you think about, I can't relate to a technology that is alienating and is becoming something that separates me. If anything, it's about bringing people more together and helping people communicate more.
Right.
So that's kind of like the themes that I see out there. And then one thing I would say that's really interesting also that I've been seeing in this, I didn't see it before. I've gone to CES and I don't have my Sony somewhere. And I remember the days where I was carrying gear. I'm talking, I look like a Sharma. I had all these backpack stuff walking around. And last year was the first year I said, you know what? I'm going to do it with an iPhone. Right. And I survived and actually and had better content because I did it with a mobile phone. This year was the first year that I actually think that that most brands are realizing that short content on mobile is the way to go. So that is the other thing. I don't know, Dean, if you're seeing that as
Yeah, I mean,
as an emerging.
I stopped carrying cameras years ago now, and I've been using my phone, and I've been taking bad pictures. But the pictures actually are starting to come out pretty good.
Yeah. So people are asking they want. Can you come by our booth and can you do 15? Not 15 minutes, 15 seconds, right?
Mm.
Can you give me a 60-second shot? Can you come in and do a live? Can you do a TikTok? And I think that has two things. First, it really helps crystallize the message. But I also fear that it also changes our attention span quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, 15 seconds, that's wow.
Yeah.
Right. And when people, we just talked about a conversation earlier today about how, engaging your consumer for more than a minute is like a huge win. At 15 seconds, how are you going to lose them? Is it going to be too much?
Yeah. 60 seconds is what I think is the norm, but even 60 seconds, you have to have, think about, you can go into TikTok and think about all of the infomercials, commercials, promotions that take place within 60 seconds.
Mm-hmm. And they make such good 60-second. That's the other problem, right? It's like 60 seconds, you could do a lot. Even 15 seconds, you can do a lot by doing so little. And I agree with you. This technology, like the evolution of technology is so controversial as far as what it's doing to us as humans, but also, like you said, it's also creating these really cool deep connections in a different way. Like I can interact with someone who's on the other side of the globe so much easier today than I could have 5 years ago. So there's just so many cool benefits. I mean, metaverse is obviously a huge factor in what's happening and some of the stuff that's emerging. I really love what you were saying about the immersive experience in the car too. You were mentioning the display, and I mean, CES is a huge automotive presence. What do you guys think we're going to be seeing as far as that goes? Because obviously EV is going to be, it is the thing, and how much more cool can we get?
I think one thing I'd like to mention is that people appreciate the technology that they can actually get now.
Yes.
The PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, great game consoles, but they've been in short supply for more than 2 years, and it's crazy that during the pandemic they just weren't available. And I heard a talk where the Ford CEO spoke, and he said that only 3 weeks of this year, 2022, did he have enough parts in stock to keep his lines fully operational. In his factories, right? It's like there were so many different kinds of part shortages that car production just came to a halt, and so in this recession, the downturn, I think we might be getting through that, and people will actually just appreciate being able to go and buy the thing that's here and now today. So that's one thing. I do think that also another pandemic kind of effect was changing attitudes in society around things like games, right? And before the pandemic, we were talking a lot about addiction and limiting time of people. And during the pandemic, Roblox became everybody's babysitter, right? And so it helped people get through very tough times. And this idea of limiting time or saying that it's bad for you, I think maybe we put some of that to rest. And that I played a lot of Call of Duty. It's not because I'm a violent guy, but because I loved getting on a 30-minute Warzone game and talking with 3 other friends during that whole time. And, at a time when you just couldn't go see anybody in person. And so I think, these things are just interesting to me about how they really changed technology for us.
Yeah. And I just want to add to that because I think that something else that came out of the pandemic and one of the things that we focus also on our channel is in the creator space. So we do consumer electronics, we do TVs, we do audio. We've seen that the one thing that I think manufacturers have learned is the cadence of the supply chain, right? So I've seen companies that overpromised and didn't deliver because, Dean, your comment about the parts just not being available. But then I also seen some companies that are hitting it out of the park because they're taking into account the supply chain. They're doing earlier planning And what they're doing is, that 2020, let's say 2021 thing becomes a 2022 thing because it took that long. The development life cycle has become a little bit longer, and they're doing better planning. So I'm seeing a lot of that happen to those that are really picking that up. But then on the creator space, what I saw also, in addition to gaming, and I have something I want to get your perspective, Dean, on the gaming side, is on the creator side, I've been seeing a leapfrog effect taking place in the laser engraving technology, laser cutting technology that's available for home. 3D printing is just explosive. We're talking, it's not even, if you think about in the chipset space and you think about how often the new chipset comes out and then you see these transformations happening. On the 3D printing space, the innovation is happening at a pace that I have never seen before, despite the chip shortage. And what that's doing for our consumers is creating businesses. If you go on Etsy and you look at how many 3D printed stuff is out there, if you think about Wednesday, I have hands everywhere, hands, right? That has changed, right? And then on the gaming side, I'll just say this, Dean, is like, I don't think anyone has experienced Call of Duty until you're wearing a Quest 2 or some type of VR thing, and you actually are holding a control in your hand, and it feels like you're actually there. Where you're actually using it, you're pumping, and I'll tell you, like, I'll just use my wife as my barometer on this. It's like she can't get enough of Beat Saber. She's like, she's like, this is mine, and it's very few technologies that come to my place that she possesses and basically says you can't have it anymore.
Takes over.
It's like, it's over. But those are the things that I'm just seeing.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's true about VR, how immersive it is and how you can get into it and just keep playing. But it also has some limits now because of like comfort factors. Like, nobody really wants to have that headset on their head for more than an hour. And, I think the really good technology that they have now is the Meta Quest Pro. And it's just, great visuals, the scenery that you see now, it just looks very spectacular. It tracks very well. But it's $1,500 and it's really aimed at the enterprises now. So that's like getting a high-end gaming PC or something, right? So I think when that technology becomes $400, then then it becomes far more spectacular. A lot of people.
Do you think this pipeline, from I worked with Second Life back in 2007. So from there to now, that's 15 years, right? Is that another 15 years where that technology becomes affordable to consumers, or are we looking at accelerated development? Because you mentioned they're taking more care of development, but what does that delivery time look like when we talk about consumer adoption and being able to have that in our houses, like we have a laptop or a phone?
Yeah, I mean, under normal market conditions, it could still be a while, but we do have Meta and Mark Zuckerberg being very enthusiastic about this technology, and they've been selling it at a loss, right? And the Reality Lab division of Meta has been losing about $3 billion a quarter, and they're selling a lot of these headsets, but to take it down from $1,500 to $400 would mean that they would definitely be selling at a much bigger loss. I think that there's some problems in that, like you can't speed up Moore's law. In fact, Moore's law may be coming to a halt at a very inconvenient time here, as things like VR come along and the metaverse comes along. And I think that it's a very difficult technology problems they still have to solve to make it in the form of glasses that we just wear on our head, right?
Right.
So we're a long way away. Yeah.
So what? And I'm sure you guys have seen these. These are AR glasses, right? But what I was going to say, Dean, and this is where I'll challenge that somewhat, is the challenge is not the cost of the technology, is that the subscription model to offset the cost of the technology hasn't been matured yet. Because if you think about the whole analogy around the razor blade versus the razor, where do you make the money? If you think about even companies like Epson, how much money do they actually make when they have a $99 printer, right? And if you notice, they don't even have a support line for you to call, because as soon as you make a phone call, the profitability of that $99 or even cheaper printer is gone, right? so the actual where they make it up is on the cartridges, it's on the ink, it's on the supplies. So when you think about Meta, I actually think that what will happen is solutions like this, even though this is more of an AR solution from Nreal, what will happen is the technology, the thing that people use to consume the subscription services is going to get cheaper, not because the tech gets cheaper, but because there's going to be subsidies when it comes to the money's going to be made in the subscriptions, right? And you think about every company has figured that out. Netflix has figured that out. Amazon Prime has figured that out. Everybody else has figured it out, right? The cost of the movie. And then you think about also the cost of the actual players are things that we just need to mature. So I actually think that regardless of the cost, we're going to see subsidies coming where people will figure out that you're better off reducing the price for the Quest because all the games and everything else that you can actually make it up.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the razor blades are quite sharp right now, and they're causing a lot of bleeding.
for sure. Yeah, it's like that's that typically happens with first movers, right? So it's I haven't, and I don't know if this has been your experience, but I haven't met one person that hasn't experienced a Quest 2 or Quest Pro. Now the Quest Pro, obviously, because of the prices a little bit more, that hasn't said I'm going to get one. And at least I would say 10, if I have 10 people look at and experience it in our house. And the funniest thing is to have people who've drank too much and do Beat Saber. That is something to watch. Yeah. But that haven't ended up that weekend or, sometime very shortly after that, purchasing one. Like literally, I would say about 7 out of 10 people have ended up buying one after they experience it. So how do they get this in the hands of the consumers so that they can experience it? And it becomes something that it's not just something for your child, but it becomes something for, the mass affluent or the people who can actually afford it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, granted, make a lot of good points there. So
do you think that the value of the technology is higher in people's minds now because of the COVID pandemic? Do you think they are appreciating or, accepting the cost of technology at a higher value now than they would have before because of, how big of a role it played while we were all, confined?
I mean, we saw lots of things get increases in price, like Meta with the Quest 2 headset. They actually raised the price by $100 for this holiday season here. And Microsoft also just talked about Xbox games going up from $60 to $70. And that hasn't happened in a decade or so, right? It's been a long time since anyone has actually sort of thought about raising prices. I mean, in technology, prices are always supposed to fall. We had things like Moore's Law that would help it. But then when you come into this shortage time and inflation, then, we're in a very different kind of time. And so like that, it's like, anybody tried to buy a used car lately, right? It's
where
horrifying.
You found one? You found one somewhere?
Yeah. So, I don't know how long this time is going to last. I mean, it does feel like recessionary pressures will definitely start to push prices downward, right? As people stop buying things. But there are things that we got used to for being free that maybe we don't wind up getting for free in the future. And that's kind of a scary place for technology products.
What I'd say in that area is it all depends on the value that the consumer actually perceives from the good. And I'll give you an example of an area that I think that has continued to innovate despite the shortage in supply during the pandemic. And that is in the home theater technology. Mm-hmm. If you think about how many people actually are comfortable going to the movie theater, right? And how many people are still not, right? And if you think about how it's really changed the way, I would say Hollywood produces content and what comes to Netflix, what comes to Amazon Prime, what comes to Disney Plus, you see more blockbuster, big screen ready films coming to the home sometimes first before going out. And so what I've seen is, especially in the ultra short throw projector space, the cost has stayed pretty much the same, and it's gone up. especially when you have, not everybody has a home that could support a home theater. But when you have these projectors that can sit 9 inches from the wall and then give you a 100-inch screen and give you like an amazing audio experience, people now say they're consuming more content at home than ever before.
Right.
It's something that people will spend the money on, and especially if it is going to give them theater-like quality, especially after they've seen it. The big challenge is just making sure that people can experience it. The other thing I would say that I'm seeing still people pay more despite it and it going up in prices, and I'll use the term adult tech. And I'll use the term for adult tech, and you think about the coffee machines, right, that have a lot of smart tech in it. There are machines from some of the brands that I've worked with that create beverages, like, if you want a martini, if you want this, and as people are welcoming more people in their home, I see that that tech, and there's a lot of tech in that stuff. Black & Decker and others have been putting together some really cool things. More of that, I've seen a healthy spend. And then there's just overall tech, things around the house that just make your house, since people are spending more time in the house, you're seeing people spend more on the home experience in the form of scents. How many of you cannot watch TikTok when you see someone talking about, would you like your house to smell like this? This is how I do it, right? It's like, why is that? And it's all because the home is now more than a place you come to sleep, eat, and rest, but it's now more, it's an entertainment place. It's
you live there. You literally
you
live
do.
there. Yeah.
You do. So I see the home tech. I've seen that prices increase, and then also, but the technology also increasing with it.
I think that. Oops. Oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
I didn't want to paint a picture that seeing technology stall right now. I think there are some really amazing things that are happening that still just surprise me. Like, there was a company called UltraSense that was just making touch controllers for cars or touch controls, and that's not a big deal, right? But they're infusing it with AI, and so when you touch something in the car and you have to touch it again because it was a bad touch or something like that, or it didn't sense it correctly, the AI sort of picks up on that and then starts to understand the difference in how you touch things, like whether or not you really intend to do something that it thought you wanted, but you wanted something else. And then you go and do that something else. Well, then it learns that maybe what you really mean to touch is that something else. And so the accuracy of the touch controls just goes way up. And that's impressive, because we've all had very frustrating experiences, I think, with just trying to push a button and saying, I pushed it, like you didn't do anything.
Why isn't it
push
working?
it again? Yeah. And training these things to use AI it gets a lot more interesting. And there was another company called Milo that sort of announced something way back in, before the pandemic, which was these communicators that would use mesh networks that you could use while you're skiing. And so when you're out of range of a cell phone or even, like a satellite phone, like you could still communicate with the people in your group if they were within range, like a couple 100 feet or so. And they couldn't ship this during the pandemic at all. And finally got around to being able to secure enough parts to actually ship it, this year. And one of the things that they're sort of heading towards is just more AI in the product as well, where it picks up on things like, this person just fell while skiing on the slopes. Maybe the rest of the group should know that, right? Then, or like, if it does have a range limit, and if you go like more than 200 feet away, it tells you this such and such person dropped from the group, and now it would know, like, this person actually fell down, right? And maybe you should all go back and check on that person, right? So,
I need that digital leash for my kids.
I was going to say that's a perfect, but I'm going to bring you to where AI is friendly, because like my wife, when we think about AI, she always thinks about Terminator. She thinks about Skynet. She actually says that Skynet's going to be born in our house because we have so much AI going on. But it's like, I joke because I was posting some videos about, it says, if I was Tony Stark, this is how I would mop my floor. And right now there is also a boom in AI, but in something that is so simple, right? And that is in the vacuum space. If you think about iRobot, if you think about even what is it, Roborock is another big brand. Ecovac is also another brand. Well, this is where I would say AI is something that can have superpowers for good. We have 4 Pomeranians, right? So we have a really busy house. And the worst thing you can have ever is when your vacuum actually just goes over poop. I don't know if that's ever happened to anyone, but it happens a lot. So the latest generation, last year's Roborock product that was announced that came out in 2022, and even some of the stuff that we've been dealing right now, it's like we have hardwood floors, we have carpeting, we have dogs, and then we have technology. And while technology doesn't poop, it has cables. I have cables everywhere. And the AI in these devices, talk about having things embedded in devices, can identify your shoes, can identify poop, right? And it says, wait a minute, fecal matter detected, and works its way around it. Well, isn't that cool? It looks at your cables and then says, wait a minute, if you've ever had like a hungry hippo event on your vacuum, or
don't get tangled up.
Don't get tangled up. It's something like one of my torture tests is I have a maze where I have 3D printed poop, kind of recognize it and avoid it. What does it do with your iPhone cable, right? Will it chomp it up or will it avoid it?
You're building an obstacle course for your vacuum cleaner.
And if it passes, it's great. So I have literally, it's like we had a party, and the first thing is, so I tell my wife, she says, I'm going to mop before I go to bed. She goes like, why are you going to do that? And I just take out my phone, I go bloop, 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 and then I just forget about it.
Mom.
And then the next morning, right? It's like AI for good, right? Such a low tech need, but such a cool way to implement AI.
I often wonder what the efficacy is of those mops are. How well does it actually mop? I guess you're sleeping, so you're not even gonna, even if it's wet.
So my wife didn't believe in it, right?
Yeah.
And my wife says no one can clean a house better than I can. And I actually put the robot to run, and then after she cleaned, and then I had the robot go, and then we looked at the water bin and how dirty it was. Never got a peep out of her. She says, okay. She says, this is good. And I'm surprised on how well they do. And, we walk barefooted in our home. We don't wear shoes in the house. And I love to have a clean floor. And you can get that clean floor feel with your toes.
Feeling,
right?
yes.
Yes. Yeah. So I'll tell you, it is, we've tried it. We've tested it. It does work. And depending on the brand, and I can tell you offline which one are going to be the good ones. It's expensive though. Like, to Dean's point, it's like, this is expensive. You're talking about $1,100 to $1,500 vacuums.
Okay.
But if they can save you time, mop, sweep, do it all, and do a good job.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have 3 kids running around. We have a dog running around. Like, who has time to mop and sweep? Like, nobody.
That's what we've talked about a lot today with our different sessions in talking about AI tools. I was on an SEO session earlier, and we were talking about, can AI really write or do the whole article for you? Well, no, it can't. But how much time can it save you? Can it help you write those meta tags? Can it help you determine which keywords are going to be most effective in your article? And it's about that value. Like, yes, we can make money, you can make more money, but you only get a certain amount of time in the day. And I think that's what I'm hearing from both of you is, at this point, it's about technology that is making our valuable time more enjoyable. Because I don't want to mop my floors.
No. It's
last night I was writing up. I was thinking, I'm late. I have to write an agenda for our next game conference, right? And so I thought, I'm going to go over to Chat GPT and type this stuff in and see if it auto-generated an agenda for a game business conference about the metaverse and blockchain and science.
How did it do? Did it do pretty good for you?
It did pretty good. Like I could pass that off as, I got my agenda ready. Here you go. It's just a starter thing, but
I tried it, Dean, and I'd be interested on how relevant the information was, because it's limited to 2021, right? So the data only covers to 2021. So even with SEO, even with some of the things that you can do it, are you basically locking yourself down to relevant search terms tags that are no longer relevant 2 years later, right? Or a year later.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't very specific. Like, definitely it didn't bring up anything that were changes that, to the industry in 2022 or whatever. And, generative AI was not a topic that it came up with for a session description, right? But I think as far as just getting me off of my butt and getting me to say,
that's
okay,
half the battle, right? Getting started.
Staring at a blank screen. Now I can edit something into like, oh, that's stupid. I'm going to change that.
Yeah, it's always easier to edit than it is to start writing. We all say that.
Yeah, and I'm guilty of the same thing. I have a couple videos that we posted that I tried the same solution to see if it actually wrote compelling descriptions, right? And it did a really good job. I want to see how well this video does compared to others, based on that. And then I've also seen there's several of the tools that YouTubers use that are, either for tags or for keywords that have now incorporated where you can just put in like keywords and then it will generate a title for you and it will generate a description for you. It's a huge time saver for sure. And I've been pretty impressed. It
may be smarter than we are when it comes to that, like as far as frequency of words. And I mean, although that, when you sometimes create SEO descriptions, it's a bunch of words and it's like, doesn't really make a lot of sense, but then we just have to review it. I mean, you should be reviewing it anyway, I think, right?
Yeah.
So I do want really quickly, I want to switch to one other question. And Dean, it was actually something, Milton, it was something that you said early on. You were talking about going to CES and people asking you to come by the booth and, can you make a 15-second, video? Can we get 60 seconds? So I love, it's like you said it's great that so many people want to come by, that you have these shorter opportunities, but also what's that doing to our attention span? And my question is for both of you, reviews and stories, what's that doing to the life cycle of news articles, reviews, stories? How is that affecting the work that you do and the stories that you're working on and the life cycle of those?
Yeah, Dean, you want to go ahead?
I think when you run into things that require a lot of nuance, then you definitely get into trouble. It's like arguing with someone on Twitter, and you have like a good 20-point argument to bring up, but they never let you get past a couple of points, and they just start sort of narrowing down the subject and like scoping in on one thing you said and saying, this is where you're the stupidest person on earth, right? And there's no sort of improving the conversation or otherwise, getting to the 20 points that you want to talk about. And so I do feel, that is a dangerous place where we're going. And I don't know what the answer is. I hope that people still choose to read and still choose to look at long form explanations of things. And I think some of those things do really well in places like, say, YouTube, right? I don't know. I'm not sure. Milton maybe has a better answer.
I don't know if it would be better, but I'll say first that I can see that the attention span of my kids has changed. How much can you, when you sit down with them and you want to have a conversation, or when they ask a question and you want to give an answer, you're very limited. It's like the attention span is very short. So you don't have enough of the attention time to really be able to give a succinct response to the question that they have. So from a societal perspective, that's something that concerns me. As far as content creation, I've seen, one of the cool things about YouTube is that you can chapterize content, right? So you can actually put the chapters and just so that people can go and see what matters to them. And that also makes a big difference so that you don't have to have your audience there for the full amount of time, but just the time that they want to see. And you're still going to be able to do well in that area.
It's better than them leaving completely.
Yeah,
they got impatient. Yeah.
And I think, Dean, I don't know if how many people actually know this, but even for written form, because I do think that written form is more challenged because of, we are all about the things that kind of are like eye candy, and words, unfortunately, sometimes don't fall into that. So what I have, and surprising how many people don't know this, that you could either ask your AI you have in your pocket, because a lot of people don't realize you have AI in your pocket, to say, read this. Like with Google on any page. I'm looking at one of the posts that you've written. I can just say, hey, read this. And it will read it to me and I can consume it. And it's something that, especially when you're on the go and you're looking at audio, I think that what we have to really look at is how can we have whatever way or form we communicate delivered in multiple formats that address the needs of that person who's looking to consume it.
That's a really good point, because I am seeing more articles have that listen to this article, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I have we have a decent sized family, and a number of us older ones read a lot, and the youngest one is a YouTube generation kid, and she actually learns a lot through something like YouTube. And so something needs fixing around the house, that kid is amazing. Because she'll just go look up a YouTube video on how to do it, and she'll find it and get it done. But I adapt to that world in some way too. Like if there's really long books to read now, I listen to them at the gym on Audible, right? And so I get stuff done while I'm listening to Dodonomicon. I actually got through that book, which is a giant size book, by listening to it.
I am encouraged though by, like Milton, you said that more and more people, like the Remarkable 2 handwriting is coming back. I know in the SEO conversation we had earlier today, apparently long form content is still Google's preferred form of content, and actually readers' preferred form of content. And our SEO guy said that his most recent research indicated that around 2,500 words is preferred. Now, are people actually reading the full 2,500 words? We don't know, but it gives them the chance to dive in where they want to. So I've just found it interesting how it's like you said, there have been these iterative incremental increases in the quality of tech, but it seems to be giving us more valuable time. And also, like, the tech is becoming immersive enough to give us what feels like an analog experience. We don't realize the tech is there anymore. And it's helping us to feel, I like to say like we did in the 80s when I would sit with my little book light and read my book. It's that cozy feeling. I think is what we're trying to get to eventually.
I like some of these CES keynotes that we've heard from folks like Carnival, or I guess there's one coming from John Deere now. It's where technology fades into the woodwork, really, of something that is really old, and like a cruise ship, that is fully outfitted in a way that you order something and they can bring it to you wherever you are on the cruise ship now, right? That kind of technology, you wouldn't expect it, I guess, on something like a cruise ship. Or you've got some kind of farm combine thing that John Deere is making. They're infusing that with all kinds of tech as well.
They had some really cool tech last year too. I feel like, because I think I was at the press conference last year at the John Deere press conference. They had some really cool like EV automation technology that was coming out, and you see technology in places you just wouldn't expect from maybe 10 years ago or 5 years ago even. It's pretty cool. Well, thank you guys. I feel like we're coming to a close here, and I think there's so much stuff that we could talk about, but it sounds like, generative AI, I think like the blending of, I agree with you. I think home tech is becoming really big. And then also that whole idea of, we're finding ways to kind of sync up in different technologies. And I think that's what's we're going to see. And obviously we'll find out from some of these really cool press conferences at CES. And I'm sure we'll run into each other somewhere out there, out at the LVCC or the Venetian. But thank you guys so much for joining us. I think this is such a great preview to the show that's coming up. And I wish you guys a safe travels, and hopefully nobody gets COVID. Question.